following program is exclusively produced and distributed by Dick Dinman's Double D Productions, Inc., all rights reserved. Hi, Golden Age film fanatics, and welcome to DVD Classics Corner on the Air. My name is Dick Dinman, and our goal is to become your exclusive guide to the very best of the Golden Age classics coming out on DVD. We'll have reviews, breaking news of upcoming releases, plenty of surprise guests, and a special feature devoted to the great Golden Age film composers, which we call Cinemusic. So let's turn on the marquee and lights, camera, action. It's time for Dick's Picks, in which I get to shine the spotlight on one of my Dick's Picks of the week.
I killed Dietrichson. Me, Walter Neff, insurance agent, 35 years old, unmarried, no visible scars. Until a while ago, that is. Yeah, I killed him. I killed him for money and for a woman. It all began last May. I was thinking about that dame upstairs and the way she had looked at me. And I wanted to see her again, close, without that silly staircase between us. How could I have known that murder can sometimes smell like honeysuckle?
I can't stand it anymore. What if they do hang me?
They're not going to hang you, baby.
It's better than going on this way.
They're not going to hang you. Because you're going to do it and I'm going to help you.
Yes, from the moment they met, it was murder. Always behind them with his devilish hunches and his brilliant brain was Keyes.
The murder's never perfect. Always comes apart sooner or later. And where two people are concerned, it's usually sooner.
Could they get away from him and his relentless pursuit? And could they get away with murder?
You don't know Keyes. Once he gets his teeth into something, he never lets go. He'll investigate you. He'll have you shadowed. He'll watch you every minute from now on. You afraid, baby?
Yes, I'm afraid. But not of Keyes. I'm afraid of us.
I'd like to move in on her right now, tonight. If it wasn't for Norton and his striped pants ideas about company policy, I'd have the cops after her so quick it'd make a head spin. Now, we know the Dietrichson dame is in it, and somebody else.
Only you haven't got a single thing to go on, Keyes.
He'll show. He's got to show. Sometime, somewhere, they've got to meet.
Fred MacMurray, Barbara Stanwyck, and Edward G. Robinson star in Billy Wilder's gripping film noir classic, Double Indemnity, in which Stanwyck's calculating wife enlists the aid of insurance salesman and duplicitous dope MacMurray in murdering her wealthy husband in order to collect his double indemnity insurance policy. It's a race against time and each other to get away with the perfect crime as they are relentlessly pursued by Edward G. Robinson's suspicious claims manager in the suspenseful masterpiece that was nominated for 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, and which has been newly restored in full 4K, no less, by our friends at the Criterion Collection. Those of you who've already seen Double Indemnity and think it can't possibly be improved, think again, because this incredible 4K restoration enhances all aspects of this 5-star masterpiece. Double Indemnity in the sight and sound wonder of 4K is available from the Criterion Collection, even as we speak. Stay tuned for more Dick's Picks, coming up on DVD Classics Corner on the Air very soon. My distinguished guest today, Eddie Muller, who via his sensational books and DVDs on film noir, restoration of various noir classics, through his acclaimed Film Noir Foundation, and personal appearances, has done more than anyone to shine the spotlight on this great, dark film genre. Eddie Muller, the Czar of Noir. Welcome back to DVD Classics Corner on the Air. It's, again, wonderful to have you as a guest on my show.
Well, I'm happy to be back. Thank you for having me in your dark corner of the world today.
We're going to talk about a little film called Double Indemnity. And,
really? I've never heard of that one.
No, I didn't think you...
Is it good?
That's why I had you on the show, because it makes me, seem so much more knowledgeable.
We'll be happy to speak about Double Indemnity.
This is one of my very favorite films. Now, I'll just say something happened when I ran it that hasn't happened to me before. I ran Double Indemnity in my screening room. And it was at 7 o'clock, and by about 8:45 or 8:50 it was over. And I said, well, it's early. I want to watch another movie. What am I going to watch? And I put on Double Indemnity again. And watched it.
It's a double bill.
Yes, and I must tell you, it was like seeing a new film 10 minutes after I'd watched the entire film before. I don't know whether there are many films that are this repeatable. It was an incredible experience. Now, I know you consider Double Indemnity to be a very special film.
Well, I always say to people, when they ask me, since, the Czar, what is film noir? How would you explain film noir? It's Double Indemnity. I say, just watch that. That's step one, is just watch Double Indemnity, and you will understand all of the rudiments of film noir. Because to me, it is like the ne plus ultra of noir. And not only is the film great, the story of the making of the film is great, and it's crucial because I don't think people understand. Not only artistically does it sort of define this whole artistic movement that would come to be known as noir, but it was the economic engine of the movement as well. Because, this is Hollywood, and you're only going to have a trend if it makes money. And the success of that film and what that success meant in terms of what was possible in Hollywood, the type of film that you could make in this different direction you could take stories, I think that's the most influential aspect of the film, is what it meant to the business as a whole and how it freed other filmmakers to make similar films.
So you're basically saying that it set the standard and jump-started the trend towards film noir?
I am saying that. I'm not saying that it is the first film noir. I'm not saying that it is... I am kind of saying it's the definitive film noir, but I am saying that the success of the film, the fact that it starred Barbara Stanwyck and Fred McMurray and Edward G. Robinson, and it was an A film produced by Paramount, that it made a ton of money at the box office, that it was nominated for all these Oscars. Those things cannot be overlooked for their significance in igniting this, what I call Hollywood's only organic artistic movement. You'll see that prior to Double Indemnity, films of that type were sporadic. After Double Indemnity came out, every studio was making these movies, at least 6 to 8 of them a year for about 8 years.
Yes, and frankly, I wish they were still making them.
Well, they do. They just go direct to video or something. It's because they're small films. They're not epic films, and they lend themselves to low budget filmmaking. But when Billy Wilder attacked it, it was grade A all the way.
And of course, this property was considered unfilmable because of the amazing censor restrictions to this type of story, which makes it all the more amazing that in 1944, during wartime, when the biggest star was Betty Grable, that a film like this could, in fact, be made. And I think only Billy Wilder could have done it. And this, what amazes me is that this is just his third film. His first film was Major and the Minor, big box office, but it could have been, I think it could have been made by anybody. And his second film I happen to admire very much, Five Graves to Cairo. And I think it basically was the success, or relative success, of that film that gave Paramount the courage to allow him to go ahead with this very, very iffy project. Would you agree with that?
Yes, in some respects, because it was his third film as a director, but of course he was a veteran, because he had worked as a screenwriter, he had been in production, he had a lot of experience under his belt.
But
so
not on this type of material.
No, not necessarily. And I think that you have to give his producer, Joe Sistrom, a lot of the credit for actually finding the material and thinking that it was a match for Wilder. There's an apocryphal story that, Wilder found his secretary reading the galley in the restroom, because he couldn't find her. Where is she? And she was in the toilet,
Yeah.
Wouldn't come out because she was so engrossed. I think that's a good PR story that he could tell later. My understanding is that Joe Sistrom had found the thing and said, this could be good. Because I really do think that Wilder wanted to out-Hitchcock Hitchcock. I think that was his goal. It was to make a suspense film and to be very subversive. I think that was the streak in Billy Wilder. You see it in all of his films, and in his very mordant sense of humor. It's like when anybody gets complacent, he's going to undermine the whole thing and show these people, what they're afraid to look at. And I think that was his motivation to make this, was like, look at this, they're killers, and yet you root for them. And, it flew in the face of the production code, which he hated. And, it's adultery, it's murder, it shows you how to commit a crime.
And for those very reasons, his partner, Charles Brackett, looked askance at the material and said, I'm not going to do this. This is garbage.
Right, exactly. It's too lurid.
Lurid.
Which, of course, led to Sistrom dropping, I think it was The Big Sleep or Farewell, My Lovely or something, on Wilder and saying, read this. This might be a guy that you can work with. And that's how Raymond Chandler came to co-write the screenplay. And which is a whole other saga in itself, the relationship of those two guys, and barely getting through this without killing each other, but creating, this masterful screenplay in the process.
I think we can definitely say, without hesitation, that this is the best screenplay ever written by two collaborators who disliked each other intensely.
Yes, I think that's a safe bet, yeah.
Now,
and so much so that there's a theory, that Wilder followed this up with The Lost Weekend, aiming that directly at Chandler.
Yes.
And his alcoholism. Like, I'm going to make this movie about him, an alcoholic writer, which is pretty astounding. And then, of course, he ended up winning the Oscar for Best Picture for that movie,
right,
instead of the one that really deserved it, which was Double Indemnity.
Is there any possible way to isolate who wrote what on this film? To me, it seems almost as if Wilder wrote it alone, because it is so one of a kind, as far as I'm concerned, with Sunset Boulevard, that I think Wilder actually wrote with Charles Brackett, which surprises me, because I'm surprised Brackett would agree to do Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah.
But
well, here's the thing about that, and in some respects, I think it's unfair to try to parse out the screenplay and say, oh, this must be Wilder or this must be Chandler, because that does, in a sense, defeat the whole purpose of a collaboration. It should feel seamless and completely integrated in the end. I can tell you this, though. I can completely compare the novel Double Indemnity with the screenplay of Double Indemnity, and you can really see where Chandler and Wilder completely improved the dialogue, because James M. Cain does not write particularly good dialogue to speak. He writes dialogue that works fine on the page, because he creates this flow on paper. But the minute you start to say the dialogue, it's like, who talks like this? And Chandler has a gift, especially Chandler, has a gift for writing dialogue that doesn't seem believable at all, but is so wonderful for actors to deliver that it's better than real dialogue.
Mr. Neff, why don't you drop by tomorrow evening around 8:30? He'll be in then.
Who?
My husband. You were anxious to talk to him, weren't you?
Yeah, I was, but I'm sort of getting over the idea, if you know what I mean.
There's a speed limit in this state, Mr. Neff. 45 miles an hour.
How fast was I going, officer?
I'd say around 90.
Suppose you get down off your motorcycle and give me a ticket.
Suppose I let you off with a warning this time.
Suppose it doesn't take.
Suppose I have to whack you over the knuckles.
Suppose I bust out crying and put my head on your shoulder.
Suppose you try putting it on my husband's shoulder.
That tears it.
From what I heard, it was Chandler who said to Billy Wilder, who wanted initially to keep all of James M. Cain's, or a lot of portions of James M. Cain's original dialogue in it, and it was Chandler who said it won't film, and as a result, they tried the dialogue on a bunch of actors, and then became aware that it didn't work.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Because I don't think Chandler had much fondness for Cain's prose style, shall
That's
we say.
an understatement.
Yeah. I think I forget what his actual comment was, but, it was like a kid with a crayon writing on a white picket fence or something,
Well,
he just found it vulgar and obvious.
Well,
I think that was the thing that offended Chandler, was that he found Cain's writing to be just brutal and obvious.
Well, and
Whereas,
what Chandler said was something to the effect that Cain's books smell like a billy goat.
Oh, very nice, very nice.
or something to that effect. And I want to talk now about casting, because this is fascinating. Richard Schickel says in his book about Double Indemnity that George Raft was the first choice, and not according to Billy Wilder. According to Billy Wilder, they offered it to Cagney, Spencer Tracy, Gregory Peck, Frederick March.
That may be worse than George Raft.
It's much worse. And Alan Ladd. Now, of all of these names, only one name kind of sticks out as a possibility, and this may surprise you, might be Alan Ladd, because Ladd had done The Gun for Hire, Glass Key, and Lucky Jordan, and in each of these three films, he played sort of a on-the-fence, sleazy guy. I happen to think that under Billy Wilder's direction, Ladd might have been very effective in it. I will add this caveat. No one, as far as I'm concerned, in Hollywood at the time, could have even come near the eventual choice, which was Fred MacMurray. But what about Alan Ladd in this? Could he have done it if he would have done it?
I don't think it would have had the humor that Fred MacMurray brought to it.
Yeah.
It wouldn't really have the same everyman quality that he brought to it. I don't know how adept Ladd would have been with some of the wisecracks, but I think he would have been effective, because I think Alan Ladd's a much better actor than he normally gets credit for if he's used properly.
Me too.
I mean, I'm the guy who thinks that he would have been a perfect Sam Spade, because he's actually the way. He's not as big as the guy Hammett describes in the novel, but visually he very much has the look that Hammett was talking about, and I think he would have been a fine Sam Spade. Not that anybody can replace Bogart, but he would have done well, and I think he probably would have done well in Double Indemnity, too.
Fred MacMurray, at the time, it seemed like an outrageous choice. And you know what it is about Billy Wilder? He has a genius for taking an affable good guy, an affable, clean-cut good guy actor like MacMurray, William Holden, Ray Milland, and even John Lund, and rubbing their nose in the dirt. He just loves...
No, you're absolutely right.
He loves to do that. And his films are so much more effective because of that.
This is what film noir, in many respects, this is what it's about. It's about the darkness under the surface. And so what, expresses that more perfectly than here is a guy that everybody relates to as a lightweight comedic actor who is just affable as could possibly be, and we're going to put him in a movie where he has murder in his heart,
Yeah.
And it works perfectly. And I can't tell you how many years I went from the first time I saw Double Indemnity, everybody who knew it and loved it, I couldn't believe how many people still complained about the casting.
You're kidding.
Well, but it's Fred MacMurray.
Oh, for
Because
God's
they all knew him from My Three Sons or something, and it's like, wow, if only they had, and they didn't get it. It was like they wanted one of those tough guys to play the part, because then it would have been like, oh, the ultimate noir film or something. And it's just ridiculous to me to think of anybody other than Fred MacMurray in that role. The way he handles the dialogue is so completely brilliant. And even in his quiet moments, his reactions to Stanwyck are great. His scenes with Edward G. Robinson, you watch the film enough times, those scenes are the point of the movie. Those are the core of the movie. His relationship with Stanwyck is, by the end, meaningless. It's his relationship with Edward G. Robinson that is what the movie is really about.
And this, by the way, is a total, almost complete invention of Wilder and Chandler, because in the book, the character of Edward G. Robinson is kind of a distant, authoritative, not a bad guy, but the relationship, I don't even think the relationship between these two men is even implied. It's a long time since I've read it.
No, he's just sort of the authority figure that I get confused between the book and the film. Walter is, rebelling against. It's like I'm going to prove to Barton Keyes that you can cheat the system, and he commits the murder really not out of any sense of passion, but just to show that he can do it and get away with it, It's kind of that to me is one of the more subversive things about the film. I think some people misread it where they think it's like a typical femme fatale kind of thing. I mean, Stanwyck is, a key figure in the film, but it's interesting to me in the story how he uses her rather than the other way around. I mean, they use each other, obviously, but he just, dispenses with her at a certain point in the story because it's really about him trying to prove to Barton Keyes that all of his theories about everything is provable and you can't get away with it. It's like, no, I can. I'm smarter than that. I can game the system. And that doesn't come out on first viewing, but repeated viewings will reveal that that's the real point of the movie.
My theory is that if Fred MacMurray's Walter Neff character had never met Barbara Stanwyck's character, that Walter Neff would have morphed into Sheldrake in Billy Wilder's The Apartment.
That's a good read. That's a very good read, yeah.
And by the way, I happen to think that MacMurray ties The Apartment up in a pink ribbon and walks away with it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the casting of Barbara Stanwyck. I was looking at a list of Paramount actresses for a possible idea as to whether anyone else could have played it. And the names I came up with, Dorothy Lamour, Paulette Goddard, just don't work.
No.
But there is one Paramount player who is not a billionth of the talent that Stanwyck is, but is of a type that could conceivably have put the part across. And I wonder what you think about this. What if Veronica Lake had been offered this role? Could she have gotten away with it?
You suddenly recast Double Indemnity as a Lad Lake vehicle.
Yeah, I know.
This is interesting to think about.
Well, it's just speculation, but I'm putting myself back in 1944, and just trying to figure out, because Veronica Lake, when she was, and she was not popular at all with cast and crew at Paramount, from what I hear, but when she was utilized well, as in Sullivan's Travels and I Married a Witch,
yeah,
she could be effective without actually being.
Well, this is damning with faint praise. I hate to say this, but these roles of the duplicitous woman sometimes serve an actress of limited means very well.
Uh-huh. And we're talking about Elizabeth Scott?
I didn't say that. But you know what I'm getting at.
I do.
You don't know whether they're acting or not.
Exactly.
When they're delivering a line. So, yeah, I could easily see Veronica Lake in this part. Would it have had the depth that Barbara Stanwyck brings to it? Absolutely not.
No.
But she could do it, and you would have that same feeling of, am I supposed to believe this, or is she just acting?
And it would be also very understandable, because let's face it, she was dynamite visually. It would be very understandable for someone like McMurray to...
Of course, yeah. And she wouldn't have had to wear a wig.
And
but this is heresy to even go there.
I know.
Because we're talking about Barbara Stanwyck, the greatest actress in Hollywood history.
Well, I agree with you. Stanwyck had this incredible ability to function believably in any film. What a phenomenal actress she was.
Yes, and she could... I mean, I always play this game where it's like, how do you know somebody is, the great actor? It's like, well, you trade their roles with other performers.
Yeah.
Right? Could she have played this? Could she have played that? And quite honestly, Barbara Stanwyck could have played any part.
Yeah.
Any part that any actress had, and probably any part that any of the guys had.
Right.
She could play them all.
Right. And for me, one of the most devastating and brilliant close-ups, silent close-ups, and I know you know where I'm going with this, is her expression after McMurray kills the husband.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
It would appear she's almost doing nothing, and it would be so easy to go over the top with that. I agree with you. As far as I'm concerned, Barbara Stanwyck was the finest actress of all time in sound films. There's no question about it.
You won't get an argument from me on that one.
And we're going to take just a few seconds to go to our necessary station break.
We pause now for station identification.
DVD Classics Corner on the Air is exclusively produced and released by Dick Dinman's Double D Productions, Inc. All rights reserved. You're on the special features on this wonderful disc of Double Indemnity, where you're quoted as being for or approving the blonde wig, which on Barbara Stanwyck's head, which production head Buddy DeSilva said, and I'm quoting here, "We hire Stanwyck, we get George Washington," unquote. Now, come on. Now, first of all, this is what I believe, and this is the first time we're going to disagree. I believe Billy Wilder, he had to talk Barbara Stanwyck into accepting the role because it's such a dark role, and she initially was afraid, well, this is just too dark. Will I ever be offered?
And he got her with that line, I thought you were an actress.
No, he said, are you an actress or a mouse?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
And that's what, and she did it. But I think, and this is just my theory, that Billy Wilder got cold feet and said, well, she's maybe a little too cultured or something or whatever, and the blonde wig was a device that he used, and I don't think he should have. It's very distracting. I can look at Barbara Stanwyck in The Lady Eve, just as an example. And are you going to tell me that the way she looked in The Lady Eve with her own, I think, brunette hair, and the way she was made up in that, would not be enticing enough for...
I don't know. I don't know that the effect was to make her more enticing. I think
it was to make her cheaper. It was to make her cheaper.
Yeah.
Was it necessary?
I'll tell you this, Dick, as an example of why I think it works and isn't as distracting as some people think. I very often go out to schools to preach the gospel of not just noir, but of old black and white films. And I'll go into high schools and colleges and things to talk to film classes and English classes and American studies classes. And the scene I always show is the meeting scene in Double Indemnity, right? With the everything in that scene is so perfect. The direction, the writing, the acting, everything. Where Stanwyck comes to the top of the stairs in her towel and the whole bit. Not once has any kid said, "What's with the wig?"
Well, yeah.
I mean, they just buy in completely, and these are kids who are like looking for reasons to disregard older films. Like, that's corny, that's stupid, and nobody comments on the wig.
Well, the wig is not
all.
that. At the top of the stairs, she's lit in such a way that the wig is not. You're not even sure she's wearing a wig.
But
it looks like
that whole scene when she comes down and she's in the white and she sits in the chair and she paces in front of the fireplace and the wig is preeminent in that scene, and I think it actually adds to it. I mean, we'll have to agree to disagree on this one because there was a point at which I said, that's so odd. Like, the wig was so, so obviously a wig.
Yeah.
That it's like, what was the point of that?
Yeah.
And now I just see it as part of the whole. Now it's very hard for me to imagine Stanwyck in these scenes with dark hair. I couldn't even comprehend.
Well, they could have lightened her hair somewhat, but of course maybe that would have looked too elegant. So I don't know. I mean, there are arguments for both sides. I am still uncomfortable with it because I just know that Stanwyck could have put the part across without any problem.
Well, I don't deny that.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that Wilder had his reasons, and I think they were visual more than anything else. And I think that, as testimony to how great Stanwyck is, she acted right through it.
Well, yeah, and she was the only...
couldn't be conquered by that wig.
Well, and the Academy gave her a nomination. It's shockingly the only actor's nomination in that film. And speaking of the most shocking Academy crime, as far as I'm concerned, the third lead,
Yes.
Edward G. Robinson. never was
yeah.
nominated for an Academy Award. Now, I look at this film, if I'd never seen Edward G. Robinson before, in anything, I would be sitting back during his first scene and his subsequent scenes and saying, holy mackerel, this guy is amazing. This is one of the most fantastic performances, I think, in film. How did this not get a nomination? I don't get it. There's no way that, well, this is a continuing frustration on my part, because I look at Edward G. Robinson and the range of roles the man played. And was it anti-Semitism? What was the problem?
Suffice to say that is, to me, Robinson in Double Indemnity defines what a supporting role is. I mean, you said he was one of the three leads.
I feel that way.
I'm not going to argue that point.
Yeah.
But yes, and I actually feel that his story with McMurray is
it's the film.
The spine of the film.
That's right.
But that is one of the great supporting roles of all time, because he is not a protagonist in the film, nor is he the antagonist in the film. He is a supporting role, and he's phenomenal in that film. His speech about the empirical evidence of suicides by drowning, suicides by high tall building. It's incredible.
Well,
apparently done in like one take.
You ought to take a look at the statistics on suicide sometime. You might learn a little something about the insurance business.
Mr. Keyes, I was raised in the insurance business.
Yeah, in the front office. Come now, you've never read an actuarial table in your life, have you? Why, we've got 10 volumes on suicide alone. Suicide by race, by color, by occupation, by sex, by seasons of the year, by time of day. Suicide, how committed? By poisons, by firearms, by drowning, by leaks. Suicide by poison, subdivided by types of poison, such as corrosive, irritant, systemic, gaseous, narcotic, alkaloid, protein, and so forth. Suicide by leaps, subdivided by leaps from high places, under the wheels of trains, under the wheels of trucks, under the feet of horses, from steamboats. But Mr. Norton, of all the cases on record, there's not one single case of suicide by leap from the rear end of a moving train. And you know how fast that train was going at the point where the body was found? 15 miles an hour. Now, how can anybody jump off a slow-moving train like that with any kind of expectation that he would kill himself? No soap, Mr. Norton. We're sunk, and we'll have to pay through the nose, and you know it.
Supposedly, he did everything in a single take.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. and it's a type of acting that you just don't really see any longer.
No.
And it's what I love about that old school style of, well, it's stage acting in a way, but not completely, but what he does is just so brilliant because it's better than reality. It doesn't seem totally naturalistic or believable. It's better.
Yes, right.
The way he delivers that, every bit of business is like so perfect when he's trying to, light the cigar and all, and it's like, how is this possible that he can do this so perfectly with no cuts or anything? He is astounding, and I absolutely love that performance. And also, I think important, not only does he deliver those, obvious set pieces so beautifully, but I can't tell you how effective the end of the film is.
Exactly.
Because of the way he plays that final scene with McMurray.
Well, he knows how to throw a line away.
Yeah.
When he says closer than that.
Yeah.
He throws it away.
Yeah. Yeah, and he hits the exact right note though.
That's right.
And he is brilliant. And John Seitz' cinematography.
Well, here we go. I was going to say two more heroes which we have to discuss. John Seitz, the DP of photography. His work in this is the core of the film. I mean, the look of this film. And I'm wondering,
in a way, it's definitive noir. And the thing that I liked most that anyone said about his work was Stanwyck herself, who said that the photography enhanced her performance.
It is a form of German expressionism. Obviously, Wilder had admired John Seitz's work in Five Graves to Cairo.
Right.
So do you think he just let Seitz have his way, or how much did you think Wilder might have
I
contributed?
think that they, obviously, I think they talked about what the purpose was of shooting the film the way they did, which I think also speaks exactly to this concept of we're showing the darkness underneath the surface. He does that in the performances.
Yeah.
It's obviously there in the writing. And then in the cinematography, it's like we're shooting in beautiful, sunny Los Angeles, and you see that, when the car drives up to the house and all that. But he's showing that this is what's under the surface. And so, you get the Venetian blind shadows, the dust and the light. When he goes up to that house, it does look like beautiful Los Angeles. The kids are playing in the street and everything. And when he goes in, it looks like some dark castle or something, and it's like, what is this place? What strange stuff goes on in here?
It looks a little like the interiors at in Sunset Boulevard, as far as the mustiness and the
Exactly. He went to the extreme in Sunset Boulevard, but you definitely see the roots of it in the Dietrichson house. But he does this throughout. Everything seems like it's kind of normal on the surface, like the all-risk, insurance company, and then all of a sudden it seems the place seems creepy.
Yeah.
And nothing is quite normal as it appears. So I think this was a very conscious decision on his part, and I think that Seitz just was a master at it. When you see a lot of the films that he shot at Paramount for different directors, you can definitely see a through line in his work when he was doing this kind of story. He knew how to manipulate the light and shadow.
He did, but the only thing that surprises me is when he went over to MGM to do Rogue Cop, it's shot kind of flatly.
That's later. That's 53.
Well,
or
that
something.
maybe that's because it's Roy Rowland and not Billy Wilder.
No, I actually think that a lot of the studios. This is funny. This is another way of looking at film noir. Why did film noir end? Well, in a way, it ended because an edict came through a lot of the studios saying not so dark, because the films didn't translate to television as well. Because of the way television worked in those days, if there was too much black, it would bleed, and you wouldn't see an image. So you notice that a lot of films that were, when they sold them to television, they made TV prints, where they took a lot of the contrast out of the film, so it would read better on a TV screen. And I know that a lot of the studios said, let's just start shooting these things lighter to begin with. So when you look at a lot of films in the 50s that were considered noir, even the work of the same cinematographer, somebody like a Nicholas Musaraka or a Burnett Guffey, the films start to look a little flatter and a little less contrasty.
Well, you mentioned Burnett Guffey, and I think of Brothers Rico, which is a perfect example of what you've just mentioned, because if Brothers Rico had been shot in 1949 or 8, it would have looked completely differently.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or you look at a film like Jacques Tourneur's Nightfall, which he made in like 57.
Right.
This is the guy that made Out of the Past, and they look like two entirely different, films made in different planets.
Now, the last hero that I want to talk about, and this is my personal hero because he's my second favorite composer of all time.
I knew you were going there, yeah.
Miklos Rozsa. That relentlessly grim and funereal score. have a feeling that Rosa composed it with the gas chamber scene in mind, because if you take that score
Interesting.
and have McMurray walk towards the gas chamber, that score works perfectly.
Wow.
And
Wow, I had never thought of that before. That's a really interesting notion, and the fact that, wow, you've just shot my whole theory to pieces.
oh wow, how?
Well, my theory is that Wilder never intended to include the gas chamber scene. That he was just putting it there to get the film approved by showing the production code office, like, look, he's going to pay for his crime. See, look, we got this whole thing built in where he goes to the gas chamber and all. And I honestly wonder if he ever intended to include it. Now, I know they shot it because we've seen the production stills from the scene and all that. But, when you see the finished film, you realize this is the end. There's no point going any further beyond the scene at, the lighting of the cigarette. But now that you mention the score and the opening titles with, on the crutches, the guy walking towards the camera, and then you think, the walk to the death house with that same score. Wow, that's a nice bookend. That would have been great.
I know, and it would have worked perfectly. And the score is absolutely brilliant. And it's interesting to note that it was despised by the powers that be, most of the powers that be at Paramount, who just thought the score was much too heavy. And it was Buddy DeSilva who actually approved of it after his people in the music department said, this is a terrible score. It's heavy. It's one of the great scores, and of course it started Miklos Rosa on some of the great film noir scores of all time. Many
almost
of our
synonymous with the sound of noir.
Yes, and many of our favorite films, noir films, are scored by Rosa. Well, folks, if you're listening to this show, what you might take away from the conversation that Eddie and I have had about Double Indemnity is the fact that we, would it be correct, Eddie? I don't want to put words in your mouth. We kind of like this movie.
Yeah, maybe that's too strong.
I think,
no.
I apologize.
I think we kind of revere this movie. Maybe that's the term.
Yes. And that, to me, would be an understatement. And Eddie, I want to thank you so much for putting up with me for these last two shows.
No, are you kidding? This is it's a great pleasure. It's a great pleasure, and you're doing important work.
Well, speaking of important work, film noir would not be where it is today, and the sensibilities of so many of us who appreciate it without everything you've been doing via books, via festivals, and God knows what else. And I wish you the best of luck. Please continue doing what you're doing, and I can't wait to see what Turner Classic Movies has in store for you. And
we'll find out soon.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. And again, Eddie, thank you for being so generous and for being such a wonderful, wonderful guest.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. Anytime.
Well, that's my show for today. DVD Classics Corner on the Air is conceived, written, produced, and directed by me, Double D. And if you'd like to hear some of my older, vintage shows, please go to www.dvdclassicscorner.net, where in addition to the broadcasts, you'll find hundreds of my print reviews of classic DVD releases. So, until next week,
keep well, keep happy, and keep listening.